welcome to the Create or Die podcast. I am here with my highly esteemed guest, Crom. Crom is a tattoo artist, comic book artist, illustrator from London, and I'm super pumped to be talking to him today. How you doing today, Crom?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. I'm gonna try and speak louder so you can hear me through the mask, so you can go through.
For sure. I think that would be helpful, definitely. And I'll bump up the audio too. So if your voice starts getting tired at all, I'll try and,
Thank you. Good,
finesse it in the back end.
good.
Dope. So, it's talking to you, especially with the mask, is crazy. So I guess I'm going to skip a couple of my questions and jump straight to,
All right,
okay. How'd
yeah.
the mask start?
Go for it. What's that?
How did the mask? Okay, I'll ask both questions at the same time. How
Yes.
did you get the name Crom, and how did the mask start?
So, Crom, it started with my uncle. He used to be a painter,
Okay.
and I've always been kind of sketching and being into kind of, you know, drawing cartoons or whatever. I asked my uncle if I should call myself something, and he said that I should have an artist name. And this is when I was about, I don't know, 7 or 8. He he had just come out of prison in Spain, and I was excited because I think he was the first kind of artist that I've met, like a real artist. And he said to me, just use all the initials of your name and use that while you find something that you're comfortable with. And
Mm.
all my names put together, they spell Chrome. And I
Oh wow.
started that since I was like 8. And, to this day, people think it has something to do with Conan the Barbarian, but it has no
Mm.
relation whatsoever. And I am a fan of Conan, but.
Yeah, I mean, with your work, I could see how people would think there would be a connection with Conan because there's such a like medieval like aspect to what you make. Like, I think people could think it has to do with some type of barbarian. Was there a character in Conan named Crom?
Yeah, so in Conan the Barbarian, Chrome is the god of steel, and is the god that kind of warriors pray to. And Conan specifically, he's constantly praying to Chrome.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
every now and then in Twitter, like people just drop me off like little gifs from the Schwarzenegger film, and I think there's a scene where he goes to hell with Chrome, to hell with Chrome to the
Wow.
four winds or something like that. Yeah, so I do love the little bit of Conan kind of references every now and then.
Definitely. Wow, that's super dope. Like you got a name and you accidentally got like some super sick lore that is in line with kind of your brand and everything. And so, and just because I'm curious, are you initially from Spain?
No, I'm from Colombia in South America.
Oh wow,
And then I
nice.
moved to London when I was quite young. Yeah, so it's kind of half and half here and there. But yeah,
Okay, wow, wow. So how old were you when you came from Colombia to London?
I was about 16, I think. Yeah,
Oh wow, so you got to really experience both.
yeah. It gets weird when you move about from place to place. And when I came to London, I came by myself, so I had no family, no friends or anything. So it's
Oh
quite
wow.
serious. Yeah.
Damn. Well, I mean, for me, I find it interesting because obviously, a lot of this, especially because I couldn't find too many records of you doing like interviews and stuff. So a
Mm,
lot of this is going to like backtrack to your history and where you come from.
mm,
But, looking, that's a super integral part to who you are. Like the fact that you're from Colombia and then you came to London at 16 because I was just there. Like that city could, like, I could easily see that swallowing or chewing someone and spitting them out. And you
yeah.
seem to have built a life there. So it says a lot about who you are as a person.
Thanks, man. Like, I mean, you've been here, so you know what it's like. I mean, London is it's a beautiful city. It's a really great place to be, but it can be quite tough. It can be quite rough on you. I've seen a lot of people come and go, and
Mhm.
thinking they're going to make it here, or they're going to stay here for a few years, and they just have to leave sooner than they actually plan to.
Wow.
It's one of those places. Yeah.
Wow, dude. That's crazy. And so, okay, I don't want to like, cause I know I don't want to give too much information, but when you were 16, how much of the internet, how much, because you as an artist, like you have such a certain type of career that I can't imagine someone have built that career without a lot of access to information. So was the internet already like a big thing by the time you came to London?
It was fairly new. It wasn't like as big as it is today, certainly. I grew up watching animes on VHS tapes and, kind of trying to find whatever you could get your hands on. If it was animated,
Yeah.
I would watch it. This is why I'll be watching, I don't know, Sailor Moon. Because if it was animated, it'd be cool. I'll give it a watch.
Yeah.
It was very hard to come by really good animes back then. And, the internet gives you so much stuff today that I wish I had it back then, but at the same time, in whatever order everything happened, I'm pleased with because that's who I am today. I am
Yeah.
a mix of all the pop culture that I had from when I was growing up until today. So yeah.
Most definitely. And I'm gonna try to stay disciplined and go in order. But you're saying so many things that I want to like latch on to. But so, okay, how did you start making art? Because I imagine you seem like the type of person this was always a part of who you are. Is that fair to say?
That is really fair. Yeah, I think that question always confuses me. When you get asked, "Oh, how long have you been illustrating? How long have you been drawing?" And to me, that is not something I can think about because I can't remember a day where I wasn't drawing, where I wasn't like sketching or making comics or thinking of something new to kind of put on paper. Um, I, I think my theory always comes to when you're at school, everyone draws. Like every kid has a crayon and they sit there and draw, and
Definitely.
slowly but surely everyone stops at some point. And it's kind of that kind of dynamic where you see only a few kids stay drawing up until they get older. And then all of a sudden you're the kid in class who draws, and everyone's coming to you, be like, "Oh, can you draw me this character from Dragon Ball Z?" Or um, and that it's kind of a slow process. And at the same time, you get that praise from people around you. Oh, you
Hmm.
can draw this, and you keep on searching for that high, that kind of recognition from those around you.
Yeah, definitely considering because most artistic people aren't like super athletes. You know, we may not have been the best skateboarders. So when you, or whatever, so when
Yeah,
you find that thing that people are giving you positive attention for, you kind of want to latch on to it. That's crazy. So, I was, a lot of what I had thought about you came from the idea that I thought you grew up in London. And I know London, the creativity of that city is so apparent. Like it's actually pretty crazy how much is in your face. So, but I know, so I assumed it was maybe like your artistic ability was something that maybe people encouraged early on, but Colombia is a very different place.
yeah.
Was your creativity something that people valued early, or was there ever a moment where you felt like kind of an outsider based on you being an artist?
Well, as you know, with like developing countries, they place priority on things that are a lot more utilitarian. Things that from their point of view will bring money and are a lot more practical. So things like art, poetry, painting, music, all of it takes kind of a second stage on these things. It's put at the back as something quite nice to look at and have around, but not a serious thing that you want to be considering for the rest of your life. So yes, there was a lot of that. But I was fortunate enough to be in a family that was very open to the idea of me being an artist. My dad was very supportive of it. Like I told you, my uncle, he was a painter, so it wasn't like a new concept in our family. I think, despite the kind of environment in which I grew up in culturally, uh, there was a sense of I could do anything I wanted as long as I was happy doing it and I could be doing the best I could at it. And I took that with me, and regardless of where I moved on to, what country I lived in, that stayed there with me.
I feel it. I feel it. That makes a lot of sense because I obviously, in preparation to the interview, I Instagram stalked you and I scrolled all the way to the bottom.
Okay,
And with a guy like you, that is not easy because you are very prolific. You're constantly posting, and now it's been over a decade, at least just on the Instagram side. So it took a while. But the one thing that I could always tell was it seemed like from even a decade ago, you were already you. Like, obviously, you've grown, your interest became more obvious into what mattered to you, but the side of you that seemed like you were comfortable being yourself is like, it seems like it was always there. And so I can see what you're saying by looking at your work, that it was always something that it was like an outward expression of yourself. That's crazy. So why London?
uh, just a random chain of events, really. I think initially I was supposed to go to the States and something didn't come up. My dad was helping me out, kind of arranging it so I could be there for like a couple of months.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, and then just one day he showed up and he said, look, London is the one place you can go to. Go there for a few months and then you come back and just carry on with your life. And once I was here, I decided I had to be here. I felt like I don't know. I felt like I had opportunities here that I could have not had back in Colombia, in terms of what I wanted to do and how this city made me feel.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a very alluring city for an artist. It's I guess it seems like a place that would be hard to give up. And at what point, because you were 16, I don't know what the laws are in the UK around this type of stuff, but when did you start tattooing?
Considering as in the big scheme of things, that's quite a recent thing that happened in my career.
Okay.
Uh, there was a point where I kept on getting messages from people showing me tattoos that they've had uh, that they had done by other tattooists. At the time, I wasn't a tattooist, so I would get kind of excited to see people getting my work on them. It's quite a flattering thing. Someone's going to put your work on their body forever. Um, uh, but I guess tattooists, especially shop tattooists, they'll do their best they can do technically. And a lot of the times, if it's not their own work, they won't take certain considerations with the line work or the shading, or they'll add something else to make it their own. And I thought that was a real shame that my work has been changed so much.
Mm.
So I thought, well, might as well just try and do it myself. And I had a friend of mine who was a tattooist, and she trained me through. I trained for about a year or so.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
yeah, it just kind of slowly took off. But I've only been tattooing for about 6 years, which
Okay.
sounds like a long time, but in the big scheme of things, it really isn't quite a long time. But yeah, um, and again, I will never lose the feeling of seeing people willing to have my work on their skin, on their bodies forever. I
Yeah.
find that flattering, and I find it quite exciting.
Wow. So you have a style that is very it seems like if it's very congruent with tattoos like flash and flash sheets and all of that type of stuff. Did were you just doing you and then people started getting it tattooed, or was like traditional or like tattoo style already something influencing you and then people got it tatted?
Uh, Probably a bit of both. I uh,
Okay.
I did an indie comic many years ago called Golden Campaign.
Yeah.
It was self-published, and I wasn't a tattooist back then, but the book was very centered on people getting tattooed.
Okay.
And so I guess in a way I was kind of going that way, and my artwork being black and white at the time only, it lent itself very well for that kind of medium. So I think it was just kind of a happy coincidence that things worked out that way.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And so, man, I have so much I want to ask you. I don't want to jump around too much, but you know, when I know the tattoos are one part, comics are one part, illustration is one part.
Mhm.
Who did you look at when you decided, because your career is like how did I don't know how to describe it. Like, if people want to work in animation, they become an animator. designer, and that's what they do. They want to do tattoos, that's what they do. Who were you looking at that made you feel like all of your different interests, you could do them all? And like what career path, like how did you know that you could be basically who you are now?
Uh, I think slowly you find your path, you find your way. You try a few things, and if they don't work, you kind of jump into the next thing. The crucial part of it all is, as long as I can be creatively in charge of what I'm doing, I
Hmm.
want to be there. I think everything else is just a medium for me. Uh, and as long as I get to create and I get to be in charge of what I create, I don't mind what it is. Um,
Hmm.
I grew up reading comics from people like Todd McFarlane and the guy from Spawn.
Of
And at
course.
the time, he was making these crazy toys. As a kid, looking at those toys and those comics, and he was quite kind of edgy at the time. I don't think there were any other comic books that looked like his. And I think I read an interview about him and how he started his toy company. Um, and that kind of blew my mind. The idea that he
Mm,
wasn't just a comic creator, the idea that he created all of these other tiny things to kind of fulfill his vision of his characters and this world that he created. And I found that fascinating. And then later on at university, I really got into the work of Ashley Wood, uh,
yeah.
the Australian illustrator, and
Yeah.
he kind of took that to a next level because he was
Yeah.
doing art books, he was doing collectibles. Again, his work was amazing, and he wasn't like a comic artist. He was doing paintings, he was doing art galleries. Uh, People like James Jean, he kind of went from comics to fine art, and I just love that idea. There are no kind of boundaries within art. Is as long as you're creating something, it doesn't matter what kind of part of it you're being, you're at. As long as you kind of create, if you're there, it doesn't matter. And I just love that. I love crossing those boundaries, crossing those lines. Yeah, and if tomorrow something comes up that allows me to do that and it's completely different to what I'm doing, then I'll do that and see how it goes.
Yeah, I definitely, when I looked at your profile, and I never want to reference people as like looking at someone because you don't know how old people are, you don't know what they were looking at. So,
Yeah.
but definitely when I look at you, I think of Ashley Wood for sure because you guys have so much of that mix of different outputs and mediums. And so yeah, it's cool to hear you say that. And just to stay on one track for a minute, like, that's not, as an artist, I know that like when to draw and paint and to do even just one project is like really tough. How do you manage your time so that you're able to do all those different things? Because that in and of itself is like very challenging.
Uh, I mean, there's no a lot of planning put into it, like really strict kind of schedules or anything. But in the way I look at my time, I see it as a gift given to me to kind of sit down and draw and do all of these things. Before I did this full time, I was working for an advertising agency, uh,
Okay.
and any little kind of downtime I had, I would use that to sketch or to kind of plan my next comic. And I feel like it was really hard back then because I had an 8 hours, full time job that will only allow me to kind of sketch and work on my stuff during the lunch hour or on the weekends. And sometimes I'll take days off just so I could stay home and draw and work on my comics. So now that I don't have to do any of that, I don't have a full time job. To me, the whole day is kind of playtime. I can just sit there and do whatever my heart desires. If I feel like painting for an hour, then I'll stop what I'm doing, just paint for a little bit,
Hmm.
go for lunch, and then I feel like, I don't know, practicing some tattoos or creating a new T-shirt design, and that kind of keeps that excitement of my day to day alive.
How did you build up to being, because I mean, I like my job a lot and my job is a little bit more creative than, I mean, not a little bit, my job's a lot more creative than 90% of jobs,
Mm,
but I still work full time and then I try to do my own personal stuff. How
yeah.
did you, because going back on your profile,
Mm.
I feel like you were as free back in 2013 as you are now. And
Ah,
so like I don't know how to describe it. How did you transition? Did you have a plan? How did you make it so that you can go from like being an employee to being independent?
so it's quite funny that you mentioned 2013 because I was still working in 2013. I'm still working full time.
Uh-huh.
Everything you see there from that year, I'm still working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and I'm just doing everything on my in my spare time. There wasn't a real plan behind everything. Obviously, you sit there and you think, okay, it'll be great if I could do this full time, if I could just do this only and nothing else. But there was no real plan behind it. I
Mm-hmm.
quit my job in 2014, and all I had was some savings from the last few years that I was working full time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working in a video game, an indie video game with a guy called Terry Kavanagh. He uh, he made an indie game called VVVV and a few other games that were very popular back then. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that kind of pushed me to kind of put myself in a position where things could go wrong because you take a risk, and I thought worst comes to worst, everything goes to shit, and then I'll just go back and find another job, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
take it from there. And it wasn't like very easy from the start. Things took some time, but fortunately, I had some money that I saved, uh, and Instagram was very different at the time. My following was growing quite quickly, and people were supporting me. And I thought of setting up an online shop, and that kind of started to work out. Obviously, it takes some time. I see like a lot of people lose patience with these things. Like, oh, this is not paying my rent right away, so why am I doing this? You know,
Yeah.
my shop was bringing in a few £100 every month or every few months. It wasn't anything crazy, but I thought the idea that I'm actually making some money from this, and if I stick with it, it may become something bigger in the future. And that's exactly what happened. Everything I start with, I thought, well, if I can pay rent with this, that is something. And then eventually it pays a little bit more than rent, and you think, oh, okay, well, I kind of put this here, start something else in the meantime, nurture it while this is doing something else, and it kind of slowly build up block after block. And
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden you're like, okay, you know what? I'm fine now. I can actually just
Yeah.
sit down and create.
Yeah. And when you say, because you reference patience, and I think that's super important, I'm still trying to learn. I think a lot of people are. So just to give timeline, because I think
Yeah.
patience can be a little bit relative. How many years do you felt like you put into like building each thing, like your online shop? And what would you say to someone who may be getting impatient? Like, say they've been doing this for like 6 months and they're like over it. Like, what would you say? Like, was it where you like, oh, it took me 2 years to get anywhere? Like,
I heard an interview recently from Seth Rogen, where
okay.
I like Seth Rogen films. It's not I really like him as a person and as an actor. And he says something along the lines of the only thing he's seen in common with people who succeed at things is that they do not give up.
Yeah.
Like, you do not give up, then you might make it. But if you give up, for sure you're not going to make it. For sure that's
Yeah.
not going to happen. But if you carry on, there is a chance that you might still make it one day, maybe tomorrow, maybe in a few years.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's down to you to how long you want to keep on doing it. And I find
Mm.
that with things that you really kind of passionate about, it's not a choice for you. You can't if you really
Yeah.
love it and you stick to it because you need to do it. It's part of who you are. It's not a choice to try it or not. You're there all the time, regardless of what happens. When I quit my job, I thought I'd rather be doing something I love, even if I'm poor, than doing something that I hate and having material wealth around me that makes me miserable.
Yeah, most definitely, because also you have to maintain those material things. If you buy a house, car, you gotta make payments, you gotta do all this other stuff. So
You
yeah,
build a
that
life,
makes sense.
and
Yeah.
it becomes your trap. The lifestyle that you build with that money, it becomes a cage in itself that you can't leave
Mm.
because you love it so much, and yet it makes you so miserable at the same time.
Yeah, it's better to never have had it than to have it and then have to try and give it
Sure.
up.
Yeah, there's that thing that is, what is it? Oh yeah, I'd rather be at the bottom of the ladder that I want to climb than being at the top of the one that I don't want to climb. And I
Yeah,
thought, you know, I read that somewhere online, and I thought, yeah, that's right. I like that.
that's a good one. Speaking of tattoos, I think a lot of people need that tatted on them, including me. So, all right. So, did you? So you said you went to university.
Mm.
You went in the UK.
Yeah, I went to uni here in the UK, up in North London. So
Okay.
it's an area called Cockfosters. And yeah, and you know, speaking of patients, they invited me a few years ago to kind of give a talk to the students about how, you know, how I got to this point and how I you know, how I did after university. And one of the kind of main feedback I got from students after my talk was that they felt like it took me too long to get here. So
Really?
I guess, yeah, you know what? I was quite straightforward about how it was for me. I left uni and the recession hit, and there was a lot of things happening.
2008.
About 2008, yeah,
Okay.
summer 2008, yeah, the recession, you know, kind of hit hard. Everything was going to shit, and I had a bar job in Camden Town. I don't know if you've been to Camden Town yourself. It's kind of the rock venues area here in London.
Okay.
So a lot of really skanky bars with a lot of really cool bands, especially back then. Uh, I had to hold that job for quite a few years. So I was a graduate being a bartender. And when you're there, you don't know how long you're going to be there for. I thought I could be a bartender for the rest of my life. And,
Wow.
you know, nothing wrong with that. But if it's not what you want to do, then
Yeah.
it's not a very ideal scenario to be in.
How
Um,
long did you hold that job down?
I had it from before finishing university. So that job kept me kind of above water while I was at university.
Mhm.
And after uni, I had it for about 2 or so years. Yeah. Um,
Wow, and
yeah.
I'm loving this. I think I'm sorry those students felt that way, but that's going to help a lot of people to know that someone as successful as you was bartending for a couple of years out of school,
Mm.
and you're so successful now, and in terms of at least freedom and creative freedom, that I think it can give a lot of people hope who are working at Ross or Ralph's or bartending themselves, and they feel like they want to give up, and they see someone like you and they're like, well, he did it, so it's not an excuse for me to give up. So that's powerful, dude. I didn't know that about you. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
I mean, and I don't blame them about seeing my journey as taking too long, in the sense that when I was in their place on my third year of university, my plan, my stupid plan was I'm going to graduate and people are going to realize that I'm hot shit and contracts are going to rain in. People are going to lose their shit over my work and they're going to be like, oh my God, where has this guy been? He is the next messiah of illustration and comics. And none of that happened. I came out of uni and no one could give a shit about who I was. All my work. I couldn't get anyone to look at my stuff. So it kind of humbled me down quite a bit. And, you know, after a few years, you know, serving pints, it gets you to that point where you feel like, okay, I need to get my shit together.
For sure. Man, I think a lot of people have that exact same experience, especially the first part. They're like, man, when I get out of here, people are going to be like knocking
Oh,
my door
yeah,
down.
you're not going to know what to hit them. This is it. I'm out. I'm free. I'm going to show them.
Oh my God, that's funny. And what did you study?
Where?
Or
What?
what was your major?
It was just illustration.
And where?
Illustration and animation. Uh,
Okay.
at this place called Middlesex University up in North London.
Oh, okay.
Uh, yeah, it wasn't anything fancy. It wasn't anything. You know, I thought I'll do something that I can enjoy. And illustration seemed like a fun time. You know, just making comics and drawing bits here and there. Even though illustration here in the UK, especially at that time, was very focused on editorial illustration. So they train you to do illustrations for like newspapers and magazines. without knowing that that was an industry that was going to fall apart within the next 10 years,
Yeah,
at least the way we knew it back then. So, yeah.
definitely. And to get on the craft side, because that's also super interesting.
Yeah.
Like I'm interested in people that go through illustration programs specifically because they seem to have a different perspective on the concept of style and brand, whereas a lot of people who come from different other angles don't have that same perspective, and the voice is always more clear from people who specifically studied illustration. Was your voice and your style something that you guys worked on and they helped you develop?
No, no.
Oh
They
wow.
they were really against it. The idea of looking for a style. They I didn't really know what they were trying to do, but I was obsessed with the idea of finding a style. I was obsessed with the idea of having something that people could look at and recognize it was me right away. And I got told many times to not do that, to kind of focus on perfecting, I don't know, anatomy and visual communication, etc., and that the style will come in time, etc. And annoyingly, they were right to an extent because looking for a style never worked. It
Yeah.
never really worked. The moment I stopped doing that is when it slowly happened without me realizing it was happening. And now that I'm older and I've been doing this for a while, I've come to the realization that style is just a result of all the stuff you put in your head, digest it, and kind of translate it onto paper. That's the style. Like that's why you look at someone's style and you can see their influences and kind of their references every now and then. The same
Yeah.
way you thought, okay, I can see a bit of Ashley Wood, I can see a bit of that. And that's basically what style is you plus all your kind of influences and pop culture and everything that's made you you.
Definitely. But you know, I get that part
Mm.
because I think a lot of us have heard that part. But for myself personally, I think that I'm wondering because I don't know. I'm still learning. I'm still relatively new. Do you think that at any level style is also discipline to continue to do the same thing? Because I think sometimes as artists it's easy to get distracted and you see someone drop a new piece and you're like, well, that's a banger. And then you start trying to do that style.
Yeah,
Whereas someone like you, like I can find references to like your famous skulls. I can find like things that I feel like are what turned into the Bird King design. You
yeah.
see things that from 2013, excuse me, and 2014 that I see in Raiders and I see in Bird King. So is there any level of like you making a conscious choice to have recurrent themes in your work?
Absolutely. I think, like I said, if you have a certain kind of range of things that you're really into, certain anime shows that you really like, certain comics and books that you read, you want to put all of that into your work. And as you mush it together, it's only going to come out in a certain way, which is the way you do things. It's going to be you. That's why if someone is trying to replicate your work, it's never going to be you because it's missing that essential part. And we all go through that phase of imitating our favorite artists and imitating the style that has us thinking over it day after day. And I think that's part of the process. That's part of you learning what is it that you like about that artist, what is it that you like about that style, and you take bits here and there, and slowly you mush it, and through the years it becomes you.
Definitely. That's because I followed you before I was interested in doing the podcast. And one of the things that I really kind of learned from you as well as Ashley Wood and like Andrew McLean is I kind of like you guys have a lot of the similar things in my head. And one thing that I see from you guys is I think I'm more of a contrarian and I would try to hide my references. And
Right.
because of that, it will water down my work because I felt like people would think I was biting. And the dope thing about a guy like you is your references are relatively obvious, but it never feels like biting. And it doesn't matter that like I like it doesn't matter that some stuff reminds me of Mignola when I look at your work. It
Yeah,
still
of
feels
course.
like Crom. And I think that's one thing I'm definitely learning from looking at like your work is that you don't need to try and like obscure your references and try so hard to be original that you're getting rid of things that you actually like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely see it.
I also think people respond to that, to the idea that you're open to the things that you like, because people can relate to that, and they can see that you're also a fan, you're also a consumer, you're also a reader, you're also a viewer, and it comes across as genuine, as real. Not trying to be like, oh, I'm so original. I've created this whole new style that no one knows about. No, it's a combination of the things you love. Like everyone else loves books and comics. You're the same person, but you have that extra kind of step, whereas you can put these things together and create something as you. And it doesn't matter how hard you try to be the next I don't know, Mike Mignola or the next Ashley Wood, you will never be them. It will always be a version of who you are with their influence, and that's fine. That's your style, and that will be mixed up with other things.
God, that's so good. I I love podcasts about art. I love listening to artists talk. I don't think out of the hundreds, if not thousands of hours I've listened to artist podcasts, I've heard anyone say what you just said, which is don't try so hard to hide your references, and that it's actually endearing to the audience to see that you're also a fan and that you're also looking at other stuff. And it's okay if they look at your work and are reminded of something else, because chances are if they like you, they like that other stuff too. And yeah, that's just so powerful, man. Like I think that is like something that I've never heard that before. So that's really dope, man.
Cool, man.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we can get back on track to the history of Crom.
All right.
So, so you do a couple years at the bar, and
Yeah,
then what was kind of that break? I imagine was it the advertising agency?
yeah. Again, like in your head, these things are gonna happen so quickly and so defined that you'll be able to mark it down looking back and be like, this was the day that I made it. And it never happens that way. It happens so
Yeah.
slowly and so kind of, uh, step by step that you never notice when it's happening. So, I worked at a bar for a few years. And then I got a job at an advertising agency. And I guess the difference there was that I finally had my weekends, which was a big thing.
Mm,
In a bar, you work you have random shifts, and
yeah.
days that you're always going to be working on Friday and Saturday, and a few Sundays here and there. So what I got from working at an agency is that I knew I'll be working from Monday to Friday, and I could dedicate Saturday and Sunday to build my plans of how I'm going to get out of that.
Mm,
So that was a big difference. Also, you get paid more money, which
yeah.
when you're not thinking about paying rent next month or whether you're going to have money to buy groceries next week, it makes life a lot easier, and it gives you more time to think about the things that you want to do. So it was a very slow process in the sense that I moved from that onto an advertising agency, and then I went to another advertising agency. And time went on, and the same feeling from the bar settled in, where you think, well, how long am I going to be here? Am I
Mm.
going to be a graphic designer for advertising for the rest of my life? Is that what's going to happen? And eventually you have to say, well, I have to try and just leave, because otherwise, it could become a life.
Yeah, and how long did you give yourself to like start coming up with like what you wanted to do, like because from the bar to the ad agency, I'm sure there was like a year or two where you were just happy to not be at the bar, and
Mm.
then because it takes time to formulate what type of artist that you want to be and the things you want to create. How long did you give yourself, I mean not give yourself, but how long did that take for you to get clarity on those things, and what was kind of your mindset at that time around the career you wanted to build? Like what was your checkbox of like in advertising I draw, but I draw stuff that I don't care about. So what do I care about? Like, what was that mindset?
So, yeah, so like you said, the moment you get a job that's completely different, it pays you more, it gives you, a level of creativity. You go through a honeymoon period where you stay there and you think, okay, I'm good. I'm actually getting paid for my skills. I'm getting paid decent money. I can pay rent. I can buy groceries. I'm good. I'm gonna sit here for as long as I can because it's safe.
Yeah.
Uh, but as you know, these things they get old, and eventually frustrations come up. You realize that you're just a cog in a big machinery of commercial stuff, and with a lot of these jobs and a lot of these agencies, and then the honeymoon period wears off. You realize that you're part of something that you have no say in, essentially. And again, that's fine for a lot of people. But if that's not for you, you're going to feel that frustration day to day,
Yeah.
uh, and that frustration is going to make you unhappy. And the moment you find yourself unhappy, then you start thinking of ways of changing that. Um, Otherwise, you spend 10, 20 years just complaining about it. And it comes down to what I was telling you about. Are all of these comforts and this lifestyle that I've built around this worth my happiness? Or should I just leave and risk going back to kind of borderline poverty while doing what I love? So it
Yeah.
took me a while to kind of plan on that. So I wanted to build a transition that wasn't going to be a shock to the system.
Yeah.
On the weekends, I was working on my self-published comic book, and I'll
Golden
be
campaign.
Golden Campaign. That's right. And I'll be going to comic cons. I'll be taking them to bookshops. I'll be trying to get my name out there. Also, I was doing daily sketches during my lunch hour, putting them on Instagram and kind of showing people who I was and what I was trying to do. And I didn't have that desperation factor of I need money from this right now because I had a full time job. So that kind of helped me out quite a lot. And when I felt brave enough and I had saved some money, uh, uh, I'm not a religious person or anything, but sometimes I'd like to think that life gives you a little bit of a nudge, and it just felt right. And I don't really know how to put it in words. There was a time where it just felt right, and I just did it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's super dope. That yeah, I could talk about that type of stuff all day because each stage, I think I'm kind of in between a few of the stages you reference, and so I get obsessed with learning about how people who made it to the other side, man, and not the other side in the sense that I'm in a situation I want to escape, but more
Yeah.
so I understand that like it's not easy, and so learning how people plan and think and brand themselves is super interesting to me. One thing I wanted to talk about that I love that you posted, I actually have it pulled up. It was a post you made relatively recently about how to start your first comic, and you had some really really good advice about starting off small, and you've taken on, like, you have some really big projects. I know there's like what, 3 volumes of Golden Campaign,
Yeah.
and then you have Bird King 1 and 2 now, and then Raiders. How do you go about breaking down a big project into a small project? How did you slowly build into bigger projects? Like, could you
Uh,
talk about that?
yeah. Sure. I think specifically in relation to comic books. I've been drawing comic books since I was, I don't know, 8. I'll be trying to make my own version of Spider-Man, and I was obsessed with GoldenEye back then. GoldenEye on Nintendo 64.
Yeah.
So I kind of drew a rip-off comic of James Bond, and I changed names and everything, and I stapled it, and I was very proud of it. So I think the
Wow.
process of making a comic was always part of who I was, and yet I had this vision in my head of what I was capable of doing. You'd be like, 100 pages comic book, I could do that easily. And yet I had never done it before. So
Yeah.
there is a disconnection between what you can do and what you think you can do in terms of the size of comics that you can do. And a lot of people want to do comics, but they've never sat down and done a few pages of a comic book. Essentially you're
Yeah.
doing 5 to 6 panels, and you end up doing like 12 to 15 illustrations in one page.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work, takes a lot of commitment. So one of my main tips for people trying to get into comics is to really test themselves with like a small one shot, 2 to 3 pages, 5 pages max. And if you can handle that, then move on to like a 20 pages comic. What everyone tends to do is, I want to make a comic and it's going to be this epic journey of, I don't know, 25 volumes with 16 characters, etc., etc. And the moment you start kind of working into that and it doesn't work or it takes too long, then you give up. And I mean, no wonder, because it's a lot of work. Yeah, I think it's like kind of easing yourself into it, kind of fooling yourself into working in these projects slowly. Because as much as I love comics, it does get to a point where you don't feel like going forward. It's a lot of work, and it's a very ungrateful medium. In the same way animation is. You work in animation for ages, and then you get a few seconds of animation.
Definitely, and especially the way that you work on comics, because I don't know if you've always done this, but I know at least with Bird King, you color it too, and so you're doing the very much like the European model where you're penciling, inking, coloring, and that's three people's jobs. And I know your deadlines probably aren't the exact same, but yeah, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't sustainable the way I was doing it. Every now and then I get people to help me do like what they call flattening. So someone filling in the gaps with color, and then you take the file and you change the colors and you add effects to make it look the way you want it to look, and that usually helps me a lot. So every now and then I'll hire someone to help me do that. Also, Daniel, the writer of Birking, he also jumps in and he does a lot of the flats for me.
Oh
Uh,
wow,
yeah, he worked for I think he worked for Marvel Comics for a while.
wow.
He's done quite a few things, Daniel. So he's kind of a good person to have with you, helping out every now and then. Even though he's a writer, he's able to kind of help out doing little bits like that. So he kind of fills in all the pages for me, and then I can just take those files, change the colors, and add the effects, and make it look the way I like it.
Yeah, I'm really interested in hopefully one day talking to him too, because because I wanted to do my research on you, I finally, rather than just looking at the images, I went to read Bird King and Raiders.
Right.
And like he's a really good writer, like, and you two together are such a great team, because a lot of times with Western comics they'll put so many words on a page that it disrupts the flow and it stops being a visual medium. And I
Yeah.
know people have different perspectives on what they like. Some people like the meaty pages, but I was born in '95, so I grew up mostly with manga, and I love the feeling of flipping and flipping and flipping and flipping the pages and feel like I'm moving quickly. And I
Yeah.
get that feeling with you guys, but I still get to have the color and the ambiance of Western books. And yeah, I loved his writing in both of those books. And yeah, yeah, shouts out to Daniel.
Yeah. This is the thing with Daniel. We kind of balance each other out when it comes to the books that we work on. Because Daniel, he's from LA and he's working this kind of very commercial side of American comics for a while, and
Hmm.
he's able to put that kind of excitement into things. And while I grew up with hero comic books when I was young, then in my pretentious years when I was a lot older, I moved into kind of European comics and graphic novels that were about people dying in developing countries, etc. We all go through different phases, and
Yeah.
all my obscure mangas from the 90s and all this stuff, and we kind of meet up and we kind of balance it all out, so it doesn't get too arty, it doesn't get too meaty, too commercial, too, we try and find a nice balance, and it really, it's worked out so far, and we really enjoy working together.
Yeah, I'm glad. I enjoy reading what you guys make. So I'm glad you guys enjoy working together, because the worst thing is when you see two people who the work is so good, but then they fucking hate each other. And so, so I'm really glad that,
Like, it's like following one of those boy bands where you find out that everyone hates each other and you
oh,
the work.
yeah, we had this show in the US called Drake and Josh. It was like a sitcom on Nickelodeon.
Nickelodeon one. Yeah,
Yeah,
I saw like a TikTok about it. And,
yeah, like apparently those guys weren't like, didn't like each other too much.
what a shame, and it really changes the way you look at the show. You're like, oh man,
Yeah.
I thought they were like best buds in real life, you know.
Yeah, dude, that's like when those movies when people go to Hollywood and they realize, oh, it's all VFX, like, and then they're heartbroken. That I had that moment learning that. I'm like, fuck, man, I thought these guys were brothers.
That's right. Yeah.
Start beefing, dude. That's crazy. And one thing I just had to comment on is I fucking love your bookshelf, man. I see you doing a little bit of sly virtue signaling on the Instagram too. You always got the head lopper, the last man, the Dragon Ball. Like
Hi.
you're a man. Yeah.
I'm missing some Matsumoto in there because I've got that
Ah.
upstairs. But you know, Taiyo Matsumoto is like a big influence in my work, and I've got all his books, and
Mhm.
yeah, I'm surprised I haven't got one there. But yeah, got a few things. Got Ronald Wimberly's Prince of Cats. That's
Oh,
an amazing.
nice.
Uh, yeah, man, there's just so much talent out there. So many good books and things and films to watch and to learn from and to get
Yeah.
inspired by.
Yeah. I definitely see that Matsumoto line. Right now I've been reading Ping
Oh,
Pong.
yeah. Did you see the animation for that? That was
Oh
a
no, I gotta check it out. I saw the trailer
oh,
on YouTube.
as an animator, you will really appreciate what they've done with it. It's just
Yeah.
they've done a beautiful work with it because I don't think translating his work into animation could be done
Yeah.
so well. And you know, Tekken Kinkreed was great, but
Yeah.
Ping Pong is just a masterpiece in my opinion.
Yeah, that trailer definitely like I had to sit down and like try and find it, but that trailer when I saw it, I was like, this is crazy because and it actually references you too, because these looser styles you wouldn't expect to translate so fucking well to animation. And when you finally get it, it's like more impact like way more impactful than like the clean stuff. Like I would love to see your stuff animated because I feel like it would get the same vibe that you get looking at Matsumoto, when whether it's a ping pong or Tekken Concrete, or hopefully one day that number five anime adaptation will be sick.
That'll be so good.
Yeah.
I
Have
mean,
you
you know, Birking is one of those IPs that Daniel and I we want to see as an animation. I think that would be the only way to see it
for
uh,
sure?
animated. You know, Raiders is kind of different. Raiders was our first project together, uh,
Hmm.
and Raiders is possibly going to be made into a live action film. So
Whoa.
that's really cool. But I think Birking will have to be an animation for sure. That's what
Yeah.
we'd love to see. You know, once we finish all the volumes, we're gonna shop around and see what can be done.
How many volumes are you guys planning on getting to?
It's 4 volumes for Birkin.
Nice, nice, nice. And what's the turnaround? Because I know with comics, the lead time can be different depending on the artist's speed. How long does it take you to crank out a Bird King volume or volume of anything?
Yeah, well, so this is the thing. I don't sit and work only on Birkin solidly for like 2 months or 3 months. As I told you before, with my schedule, I do a bit of this and a bit of that, and that kind of keeps things exciting. You know, I'm
Yeah,
not, you know, I'm not an accountant. I'm not an engineer. I need to feel alive while I'm doing these things. So
yeah,
I usually take a year to do a volume, a full volume. So we just finished volume 2 of Birkin, which is coming out in November.
yeah.
Uh, but while we're waiting for that to be released, we're already working on Birkin volume 3. So right now, I'm working on it and having it ready so it can be published in 2024.
That's not a bad cadence at all, though, man. Like, there's guys who I read like some comics, and I know for a fact that like the guy, it seems like they're working close to full time on it, and they only come out with a volume a year. So the fact that you're able to do so many different things and still crank out a volume a year is really impressive, man. That's
Yeah, I mean,
solid.
don't get me wrong. The last few months before the deadline, I'm there
Uh
day and night because I'm like, shit, I'm panicking. I'm not gonna make it, and
yeah,
too many days off, just chilling or painting or you know doing leather jackets or God knows what.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I also find that the quality of the work, you know, from when you have a lot of time and when you have very little time to do it, especially in comics, changes, and it makes for very interesting kind of style effects in your work.
mm,
feel like the first few pages where I have all the time in the world and I'm self-indulging into what I can do. It's nice, but it doesn't have a certain kind of spark that the last few pages have when they're all being rushed and I'm not thinking too much about it and I'm just kind of trying to get the story across and get the characters in the best way possible. So there's a difference between those two, and I always try and find the middle, and I think that'll be where the work is perfect. But you can't really kind of engineer these things. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. I think that like when you have more time, you tend to second guess things like for me it's shapes. Like I always feel like the shapes that I come up with on my own are I think they're lame, but when you and so you try to tweak it until you can get it to look like someone you respect, but when you have to rush, you start doing just what comes from you.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's finding
Mhm.
that little balance, and yeah, I'll get there. Maybe by volume 4 it will be perfect.
And man, well, it's already good. I fucking love to read. I cranked through like 50 pages of that joint last night, and I was loving it.
Thank you, man. This was really good to hear.
Of course. And we're coming up on the closing, but the way you approach, warming your way up to comics,
Hmm.
would you say that that was your approach? Because you also are very prolific when it comes to shirts, prints. You got a beautiful jacket behind you, the enamel pins. So is that because a lot of people can be afraid to put their work on things like that? Like, did you slowly warm up to becoming like this kind of all-consuming designer?
Uh, Again, this happened out of circumstance and kind of things led me to this path. I Well, the way it works now is I create things that I want to wear, things that I want to kind of have for myself. That way, when I sell them, people love them and they enjoy them. And really and truly, I'm just making things for myself. And if I'm painting a jacket, it's because I want to wear that jacket and I want to be out there showing it off. Um, Same with like recently, I'm going to be making a T-shirt of Bloodborne. I don't know if you're a Bloodborne player, and I've been replaying that game recently again, even though it's a really old game by now. But
Uh-huh.
it's just such a beautiful game, and I thought,
Hmm.
fuck it, I need to make a T-shirt of that game because I want to wear it. I want to give one to my best mate. You know,
Yeah.
and that's how kind of it works now. At the beginning, it was just a matter of trying out things. I thought I'll sell a few T-shirts. If I make enough money to make more, then that'll give me the freedom to try out a few things. And then as you slowly grow and you have kind of more money to kind of make pins or jackets, sweaters, the world is your oyster, and it's quite exciting to see your work on all these kind of different uh, garments and things. Yeah, I enjoy seeing it. It was just a matter of trying out things, and obviously the fact that people can support me that way and can help me maintain this freedom, this creative freedom that I have, is all thanks to people buying T-shirts and buying pins and helping me out on Patreon. That's why. Yeah.
Mm. Wow, man. Yeah, you got so much going on and it feeds into everything, but you make it work and you do it in a way that's authentic to you. As we close out, I think there was a lot of lessons that uh, people could gather from your career. I mean, I'm speaking selfishly because I want to learn from you because I think if I think about the career I want, it's something akin to what you actually would. So if we go back
Mm.
and you had to give 18-year-old Crom the key lessons of uh of how to build what you have now. If you don't mind, I take a stab. I guess it would be patient.
Mm.
Things are going to take time.
Yeah.
It would be authentic to what you like and enjoy, and go create that. And then there's an artist named Evan Edmondson. He says always be doing a little bit. So rather than trying to like blast and be focused on like one thing, always be chipping away at the comic, chipping away at the t-shirts, chipping away. Would you say those are like the key lessons that you could give to your younger self to be who you are today?
Absolutely, definitely patience, and the idea of building little bit by bit. I think that especially when you're in your early 20s, you want everything now, and I get it, but that impatience can be detrimental to your evolution to you growing as an artist and as a person. You need to go through all the rough bits. So 10 years later, you're not an asshole. So things
Yeah.
work out in a nice and healthy manner. It's like when you're watching Star Trek and they find these new cultures in different planets and they want all the technology that the Federation has right away. They
Mm.
always tell them you can't have it now because you need to work for it. So
Wow.
you can appreciate it and learn from it. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's that. There's the idea of if you're climbing a mountain, just stop looking at the top of it. Just step by step, slowly, you'll get there. And one day you'll be standing on top of it if you kept at it. Um, Other than that, I mean, there's a lot of things I've learned now that I've been doing it for a while, but I think that's kind of the crucial bits. I had something in mind just now and it just escaped me, just like that, disappeared from my mind. But yeah, um, what else? Sorry, yeah, I had something. It was really good and it just left me. My bad. I'll email you once I
Yeah,
remember.
I was gonna say if it comes to you, just send it to me and I'll record at the end.
Yeah. Younger me was a little shit. He didn't know what was what, and I would love to give him a few slaps and to do stuff.
For sure, man. Yeah, I love what you said about the patience, going through the shit just to not be an asshole. I fucking love that. I really love that, man. That's huge.
Yeah, I do think
Yeah.
that if I had any kind of mild success when I just came out of uni, the way I expected it, I would have been an absolute asshole because I'd be like, I was right all along,
Yeah.
that's it. And yeah, I think it's quite important that you learn from your mistakes and from things taking time. Yeah.
Well, man, you've been very gracious. You have dropped some knowledge bombs that I'm pretty sure are not just floating around out there like crazy. So I want to thank you so much for your time and thank you for your like genuineness and willingness to share things that you've been through and lessons that you've had. And yeah, just thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. And thanks for giving me a chance because I'm still pretty new and you didn't have to.
Oh man, I mean, I've seen your work online and it's really cool shit what you're doing. So
Thank you.
I'll take any chance to meet talented people and just talk about creative stuff and the fact that you took an interest in what I'm doing and I still can't get over it that people genuinely like what I do. So I'm very excited about it. Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thank you, man.